Welcome to Fearless and Flawed. Today, we're joined by Dr. Liz DuBois Erskine, executive coach, writer, and the woman behind Ladies Who Lunch. She holds a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution. She's coached leaders and politicians, and she is one of the best storytellers we've had in this chair.
Before the coaching, Liz was on the inside at Disney and at iHeartRadio. She took lessons from both and burrito wrapped them into a practice that helps leaders handle conflict that most of us spend our lives avoiding.
And she started this in June of 2020, another COVID baby. And she'll tell you straight, without COVID, the company might not exist. She works mostly with women. She's not interested in selling you a course. And she has a particular gift for helping women put down the armor they carry into male dominated rooms.
I'm Serena. I produce the podcasts and webinars that grow your business.
And I'm Sara, an email marketing pro here to convert clicks into cash. And together, Serena and I are two women in charge, digging into the fearless, the flawed, and the fabulous journeys of female founders rewriting the rules.
Welcome to our show, Liz.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Welcome.
So, before any of the coaching, you were an employee at Disney and at iHeartRadio.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A cast member. Disney does not call their employees they don't call their employees employees. They call them cast members. We put on the
A
show.
cast member at Disney. So what did you learn from these very two different machines about leadership? And what do you use today in your current clients?
I'm a positive person, but we'll start with a negative. So at iHeart, I learned like everything not to do in how you treat people where you work. When I started there, so it was called Clear Channel Radio when I started there. So when I started at Clear Channel, it was like a very family feel. The like regional director would go to people's baby showers and weddings, and it was just like the kind of place that was nice to work. And like you could make a lot of money working there too. And so people were very motivated to stay. They felt like this was their career. And then the corporate structure changed and they changed the commission structure overnight. So people that were making, six figures and up we're now making like half that in overnight. Can you imagine having your pay cut in that way, right? In the Washington, D.C. area where mortgages are, like $1 million homes are the norm, not the exception. And the way that people got treated was just as disposable, expendable. The days of having like leadership at your baby shower was over. I went out drinking one night. I don't drink anymore, and I'd stopped drinking while I was there. That was I like got sober while I was at that job, and have stayed sober since. And I went out drinking one night, and like one of the regional directors was there, and he got absolutely shit faced, and he was trying to pursue one of the like younger women that was kind of like my age. I was 22 at the time. And I remember he was just like totally blitzed. We were in this very posh area of DC. And like the way I was raised, if somebody gets like really drunk, like you put them in a cab and you send them, like you take care of your friend, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do. And I was very overweight at the time. I was a chunky girl. I had very curly I still have very curly hair, but, like, I kinda didn't know what to do with it yet. I, like, didn't I hadn't blossomed yet, and I was still, like, this very, very much still, like, an awkward teenager, even though I was in my 20s, right? And so I'm, like, trying to put this guy into a cab, and he was really trying to get up on this other girl, and I was like, I thought I was being helpful, and he got super mad at me and, like, called me fat and all this stuff. It was just, like, a crappy culture to be in, and so, like, what I learned from that experience was really that, like, how you treat your people matters almost more than anything because they just had this revolving door going, and when I had first started there, if someone left the company, an email would go out to the entire company saying like, "So and so has left. We wish them the best in their future endeavors." And by the time I left, those emails didn't go out anymore because there was so many people just leaving the company. And they just really viewed people as these disposable cogs as opposed to like talented people that needed to be developed that are expensive to develop and need to be cultivated and cared for. And so what I learned there was how you treat your people matters almost more than like what your product is. If you can hold on to talent and maintain a staff where people really know what they're doing, then the rest of it will kind of take care of itself. With Disney, gosh, I think the big thing that I learned from Disney was know what you're actually selling. Like, Disney is not selling stand on a hot pavement for hours and hours with screaming children so that you can ride in a fiberglass elephant spinning through the air, right? Like, that's not what they're selling. They're selling the promise of family memories. They're selling the promise of magic. Like, if you come here, you will have an experience that takes you outside of your everyday and, like, gives you an experience to feel like more than yourself and to have these kind of memories with your family that'll last generations. Like, that's what they're selling. They're not selling the actual, like, product that they have to offer, which is, like, a very hot amusement park. That's what they're really like, you're purchasing a ticket to a hot amusement park, but that's not what they sell, and so learning how to package and message in such a way that people were like, "Oh, okay, like, this is something that I really understand the value of," that's what I learned from Disney more than anything else.
It sounds like a poor experience, though. I mean, so iHeartRadio, not the vibe.
I have no idea what it's like over there now, like, no clue whatsoever, but I'll say this, when we talk about, like, conflict theory, right? Conflict analysis and resolution, when you talk about conflict theory, you talk about in groups and out groups. Like, how do we have the formation of different groups that end up in conflict with one another? And one of the, like, best ways to form a group, like a cohesive group, is to have an external conflict. And so the people that I worked with who were, like, my fellow employees there, this is, we're 20 years in the future now. We're still friends. Like, I could call up any one of these people and be like, "I need a kidney. I was just diagnosed with kidney failure. Would you give me a kidney?" I have no doubt any one of them would be like, "Yeah, let me sign up to be a donor." Right? Like, even though we don't talk on a daily basis, these aren't like best friends that I would like call up and have a drink, but these are people that I absolutely like unshakably, no question, I know are in my corner.
That's really interesting because you tell a story like that, right? And many of us would would kind of file that under like, let's forget about it. That sucked. Like, I learned nothing from it except the corporate world sucks. Or like a lot of us would take something out of that and almost be bitter or be feel like like we are up a creek with the industry and just in general maybe just be a bit kind of jaded to the whole thing. But it sounds like in your work now, that actually is a perfect experience to have because you kind of have seen, I'm imagining Disney is different. I'm
Disney's
imagining.
different. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm imagining like you had the bad, what could be perceived as like a bad experience, right? Even though you've learned from it, but like it's a bad experience. That guy was a douche, he was a dick. And then you went to Disney, and I'm imagining what? Are we all singing Kumbaya while we're in outfits? What are we doing?
Yeah, so I was at Disney prior to iHeartRadio. So I was a cast member at Disney on site with their college program. I was a lifeguard, sitting around in my lifeguard uniform, singing "It's a Small World." We don't sing Kumbaya. No, so I was on site with Disney as a lifeguard, and then I went into their marketing department for the college program. So I was going to colleges in the Maryland and DC region and marketing the college program, and you should sign up for it, and learning marketing through that lens, through the like Disney magic lens. As much as iHeart was such a like slimy corporate experience. Like, I learned so much from that about, like, having my own back because I got recruited to ABC Radio. They were gonna give me a job. I was done. Like, almost everyone that I knew there was like, "Oh my god, get me out." And ABC Radio, which is Disney, owned by Disney, was like, "Oh, you can come and work here and do the exact same job, be in our advertising department." I was like, "Sweet, that sounds great." And then Clear Channel threatened to enforce their non-compete. They were like, "No, you can't go to radio anywhere else for 6 months. Like, go fuck yourself." And ABC decided, like, we can't like back you on this. We're not going to go to court over this on your behalf. But they sent me the most beautiful bouquet of flowers. And like the manager that wanted to hire me called me and just like, "We're sorry. We think the world of you." But I had no job. I had an apartment. I was like 23 years old at that point. And I was like, "Oh shit, what do I do?" But I like leaned on people. I leaned on my network. I'm in a 12-step program. I had somebody in my program be like, "Hey, I work for a magazine in advertising, like, come talk to my manager. And I was unemployed for like 48 hours. I got hired at that magazine and went and did it. I did advertising. I did some modeling while I was there. And it was like a super good experience. And so, like, if you're listening to this and you're in limbo, just like continue to advocate yourself for yourself and know that you're awesome and other people will see that too.
I've just found in the past, just by verbalizing that you're having problems, people do step up.
Mhm.
I think it's when you don't when you I don't know, you kind of hide it, then how can anybody suggest that there is a job for you or that they can make an introduction if they don't know you're looking?
Yeah, shame makes us victims.
And where does so in this story, because I know there's a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution. So how do we go from where we are at 23 to the PhD? Like, you're working in advertising and marketing, because that's quite a leap now. Like, what is there a moment where you go, aha, this is what I meant to do? Does someone suggest, hey, you have a knack for, this thing? How do you get there? Because it's such an interesting.
Yeah. So I was sexually assaulted when I was 15, and it, like, took a lot out of me. I ended up gaining about 100 pounds after that to, like, buffer myself from having a body and having people hit on me and stuff. And so I had joined a 12-step program, lost all of that weight, and, like, the same weekend that I, like, was handed my size 4 jeans, like, "Congratulations, you're pretty now," I had a mentor hit on me. And it was in a, like, way that just made me feel like he was, like, trying to take ownership of me, and just, like, it was gross. We were at a party and he kind of, like, wheeled me around the room as if I was, like, his plus one, which I wasn't. He had a partner and I had a partner, and it was just, it was a gross experience. And so I, like, go home and just completely fall apart in my partner's arms. I was like, "Oh my god, blah, 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 this is awful," and this is not my husband, but, the person I was with at the time. And I spent about 2 weeks really just, like, processing the fact that I had gained all of this weight because I didn't wanna be visible, and I didn't wanna have a body, and I didn't want male attention, and, like, how much this experience had cost me. And I went to work at the magazine that I had talked about getting hired at, walked into my office, and my manager took one look at me, said, "I don't need to know what's wrong with you, but you can't be here. You have to go home." Sent me home for 2 weeks. I did a bunch of therapy. He was an amazing boss. And went back to work after that 2 weeks and doing therapy like 3 times a week and walking around museums and just crying and kinda, like, getting my feet underneath myself. And I was, like, back in my office. There's big fancy Mac computer with all these ad layouts on it, and I was just like, "What the hell am I doing here? Like, what am I doing with my life? This isn't like, this doesn't matter to me. I don't have any skin in this game." And I thought, "Well, if I can get companies to give me money on the premise that buying advertising will make them more money, I bet I can get people to give women's organizations money on the premise that it will change the world. I bet I could do that." And so I started a foundation, or no, that's not true. I started a consulting firm that works with foundations. And so I was helping women-focused nonprofits raise money. So all of the stuff that I'd been doing in sales for radio and for magazines, I was just doing now, but in fundraising and development. And the person I was with at the time, who's my son's father, said to me, "You gotta hunt with a bigger gun. Nobody's gonna take you seriously." He said, "You've got everything it takes to run for Congress. Like, you can do whatever you want, but not with just an undergrad degree. Like, go to law school or go get a PhD, pick one." And he was in law school, and I thought, "Well, we have that covered." So I went and got a PhD.
What a Can I just also say, I think this is very important, because up to this point, I have heard, like, there have been some really undesirable male characters in your life up to this point from these stories. But it's also very refreshing to hear that it sounds like your partner at the time, who was a male, was also very supportive. And so I think it's really, what I'm hearing is, like, you found yourself in these situations that That sucked. I don't know how else to say it. It sucked. And you kind of looked outwards to who your community was. And that can be a variety of different people, the 12-step program, coworkers, partners. But I really appreciate at this point how, like, people can make suggestions and people can give you advice and people can say hunt with a bigger gun, but you do it. You take the advice. You that to me is the most impressive thing because after just hearing a snippet, consolidating those experiences into 2 minutes. Holy shit, some people don't ever leave their bed after that happens. But you continued going. You get the PhD in conflict analysis and resolution, which is a very specific thing.
Yeah, it's a cool field. I can tell you about the field if you want.
Yeah. How did you come about it? Because like when Serena and I were chatting during our pre-chat, I'm like, I've never heard of that field, but obviously it exists for a reason.
Yeah, here's why it exists. So after World War One, the entire academic community came together. Sociologists, psychologists, all the people came together and they said, well, that went really poorly. How do we make sure that doesn't happen again? And so they created the field of international affairs. And they said, okay, now we've got it. Now we'll just study how to get along better, and that'll never happen again. And after World War II, the academic community came together again. They said, well, that didn't work. What are we missing? And then I amended the first part. I said, sociologists and psychologists and all of them came together. That's not true. Political scientists, all the kind of like hard sciences of the academic sphere came together and said, how do we better work together so that that doesn't happen? And then after World War II, they said there's these human elements that we're missing. And so sociologists and psychologists and anthropologists then came into the mix and created the field of conflict analysis and resolution under the auspicious of if we can really study human behavior and really study politics and how people interact with each other and how large scale systems of power operate, then this won't happen again. And obviously, we continue to have armed conflict. We continue to have conflict, but that's where the field of conflict analysis and resolution came from. So it's a very broad field. I have colleagues from my program that are the lead, like, foremost thinkers on corporate social responsibility in the aftermath of the Holocaust and helping companies take responsibility for their roles in different mass atrocities. I have people that are in sports diplomacy. I have people that teach. I've got a colleague and a dear friend of mine in Cambodia who's a professor, right? Like it's kind of all over the map. But what I've done with that is I've taken my experiences in marketing and advertising, my experiences in political fundraising and running political nonprofits, and rolled that into my work studying leaders and working with leaders.
So, with all my time as working in marketing and advertising, it always fascinates me how we think people behave one way and they absolutely do not. How the complete opposite can be true, and just to go off on a slight tiny little tangent, because we've hit on this topic a number of times on Fearless and Flawed, is how AI is very, very like it's right. It has this one narrow little funnel, but how much of that are we going to miss from the human element, the side where people don't behave in the way that we perceive they should or would like. So yeah, okay, sorry. This is a subject that really fascinates me is how people how that whole thing about how people really do behave when you put them in different situations and stuff. So I'm completely bought into this.
Well, I think people are motivated primarily by a desire to stay safe, right? That's why we don't leave our bed after things that are scary happen, right? Like we have a deep seated biological drive to survive. And so when people act out of that, act out of like what's behaving nicely or whatever, what it's generally coming from is there's a perceived threat to my safety, and I have to neutralize whatever that threat is by whatever means necessary so I can continue to have the mental stability of I know that things are going to continue to be okay for me.
That makes sense. And so then you're like, you're working on your PhD, just getting back to the timeline because it all eventually culminates to COVID and then June of 2020 and you decide to to now start the business and like just walk us through that where it's like, hey, okay, I'm going to go to my PhD, I'm going to study for my PhD. You get it. Conflict resolution analysis, great. There's I believe the focus was on organizational development, trauma, and nonprofit leadership. Perfect. And now you're like, now I'm just gonna like do my own thing and recruit my own client. Like, how does that work? How do you go from that leap of like, now I have the PhD, now I'm working in a different industry, I'm using my marketing brain, but now I'm also gonna be an entrepreneur.
So this is the third company I've owned. Like, this is not my first go round, right? Like, when I started my consulting firm to raise money for nonprofits, like, that was as a company. I was like, I started my first company when I was 24. When I finished my PhD and was working in house at a law firm, I was coaching. I was a divorce coach there. And I was also doing their sales and marketing. So I was in house doing both coaching and sales and marketing. And during that time, founded a tech company with the owner of that law firm and two other people in the law firm. So that was my second company. And then this is my third. So entrepreneurship's been a part of my story for a very long
Did you
time
say from 24?
since I was 24. Yeah. So, and I'll be 43 here in like 5 weeks. So it's been 21 years of entrepreneurial adventures. So I'm coaching at the law firm. Pandemic starts and my kindergartner now has no school going on. And he needed me. He needed me so much. And like I remember I took a Zoom call in my bedroom and he was out in the living room and he decided to put like, the window blinds, how they have that little stick that you, like, wind and it opens the blinds more or less? He had taken this off of the window and put on a superhero cape, which was like a towel around his neck or something, and put this thing in his mouth for God knows why, jumped up on a kitchen counter and flew, right? He, like, flew like a superhero off of this, so I'm in the bedroom, right? I'm, like, 20 feet away from this kid, but there was a wall in between where we were, and he had jumped off of this very high, like, countertop level chair, and stick thing had gone into his cheek, and, I crying, so I heard him, obviously. We rushed to the ER, and they, like, can't put stitches in it because it's in a part of your body that they, like, don't stitch up unless there's, like, an actual hole through your cheek. I was just like, I can't be on a Zoom call and have this child in the house. Like, like, that's just not physically possible, but I was, like, wading my way through it, I'm one of a gazillion parents trying to figure this out, it's gonna be okay. But at that point, I had already had this dream of living on a boat. I'd always wanted to live on a boat, and this moment felt really like maybe this is the right time. There's no, like, commuting right now, there's no school right now, my apartment was very expensive, like, maybe this is the time that I move onto a boat. And my former partner that we've talked about as being very supportive is my son's dad, and I called him and his wife, and I said, "I think this might be my moment to do this," and they were very supportive, and they said, "Yeah, I've wanted to do this for a long time." And so me and my kid move on to a boat. And there was a day where I was getting him and we had 2 dogs, so I'm getting my dogs and my son off the boat to go somewhere, I forget where we were going, and he falls off the boat. And he falls in between, like, where the edge of our boat and the dock is, so maybe like a 15-inch, like, opening. And he's in kindergarten. He was not a good swimmer at that point. I don't even know if he could swim at that point. And he falls off. And had I not been right there, he would have drowned. He would have been under the boat, and I would have been looking all around thinking that he had wandered off to play, and he would have been under the boat, and I would have never known. And that that happened that day, and the next day I quit my job. I was like, "There's no way that I can, like there I just can't. Like, there's not enough of me to supervise an active 5-year-old and do this." And so I signed up to be a tutor online for kids learning English, and I hired a student who was getting her education degree at the University of Maryland. I bought, what's it called, a homeschool curriculum for her to do with him. And so she nannied him and tutored him like 20 hours a week while I worked. And my goal was to simply replace the income that I had coaching at the law firm. And if I needed to, I would supplement it with this like online teaching gig. And instead of just replacing my income, I tripled it in their first month. And I was like, "Oh, okay, so this is gonna work out fine." And it has. Like, I've had to supplement here and there with little bits of odd jobs, but, like, as a, like, general rule, I have made a full-time income as a coach since that June of 2020 moment when I was like, my kid fell off the boat and, like, under no like, I'm sorry. I can't. Like, and I loved my job at the law firm. It was an incredible job. I had an incredible boss, and it was very, very hard to leave. But, you do what you got to for your kid.
That is a wild story. Also, can I just say, we do pre-chats with all of our guests. The stories that you have just out of your back pocket, because sometimes we chat and it's like, oh, we kind of heard a little bit of this, the boat, the falling, the like, and it like, we're all mothers here. Like that feeling when you said, if I wasn't there, I mean, that shook me to my core. If I wasn't there, I would have thought he just ran off. Like that is so relatable. Oh, where did he go again? But you realize, okay, I got to do this. If at nothing else, I just got to make what I'm making. You triple your income. How? Who are your clients? What's your pitch? What is like the ideal client look like? What is the ideal, like, what does the end product look like when someone comes to you? Hey, I want this. Okay, I can guarantee you this, or this is what I'll provide for you. Just walk our listeners through, like, what exactly is a transaction there?
Yeah. What's interesting, so that June, I was like, I like have to replace this income, right? And like, so that was June 2020. January 2021, 6 months later, I made $50,000, right? In 1 month. And so like my company scaled very, very, very quickly. That first month, what I did was I called every single person I had ever interacted with in my entire life. And I said, this is what I'm doing now. Do you know of anyone that could use a good divorce coach? And that was how that took off, was I just called every single person I know. Everybody knows somebody that's going through a divorce, right? Every single person we can think of and be like, oh yeah, like my sister's nephew's dog walker is going through a divorce right now. Like, let me see if they need somebody, right? And so it took off, but very quickly I learned that as much as I am passionate about divorce coaching, and I continue to this day to do couples conflict resolution coaching. So if a couple is like struggling in marital counseling, right, and they're like not really getting what they need, they'll come to me and they'll be like, we need something like much more directive around moving forward versus like analyzing and talking about our feelings. Like, what are we going to do to move this forward? So I do work with couples still, but I do very little actual like divorce coaching these days. So I had 3 different clients come to me, bing, bang, boom, in a row, women going through a divorce, and they couldn't go get traditional jobs because they had kids at home. And they're like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna get alimony. I have to have a job. How do I do this?" And I was like, "Oh, well, entrepreneurship's been a part of my journey for a long time." I was like, "Well, what are you passionate about? What do you like to do? What are you really smart at? Blah, blah, blah." And we created companies for these 3 women back to back to back. I was like, "Oh, I think I'm supposed to be helping people start businesses. Like, I think that that's really what this is about." And so, lumping all of my experiences researching women leaders and working on companies and building companies and scaling companies for other people and advertising and all of that, I mushed everything together into working with female leaders who are right at the precipice of having something go in a really good way, not in a blow up and in a bad way. So working with people that are really right at the precipice of something tipping into the next level, but are either feeling like, oh my God, how do I make that happen? Or who do I think I am? Like, oh, too big for my own britches, that sort of feeling. Or like, what are the actual mechanics of doing this? Like, I don't like how do I make this happen? I can see the vision, but I don't know how to operationalize it. So people come to me when they're in a moment of like, I can see what's next, but don't know how to get there, or I don't want to let myself get there because it's too scary. They come to me, we work on all the psychobabble side of why it's hard and scary to get there. We work on all the strategy side of what to actually do moment to moment, and they flourish and they create companies that are really sustainable and do incredible work in the world, and they make good money and they spend more time with their kids and they work less. And life is good.
So one of the things we've noticed whilst doing Fearless Flawed is how many women are accidental entrepreneurs, where similar to you, similar to me, where something's happened, and that's encouraged them to start their job, to start their entrepreneurship. That's something we've noticed, but also the feeling that we're not worthy, that we're not good enough, that or we don't charge enough because we don't have the power, we don't feel as though we have the power to charge enough, or whatever our own personal issues are. That, I mean, they're really common with women. I feel the women we've spoken to. So, what are some of the commonalities that you see, and how do you advise around these commonalities?
Yeah, I think the big one that I see specifically with women versus my male clients who look a little bit different is that they're afraid of what other people are going to think if they pursue what they really want to do, right? Like, what are like the blowback that other people are going to have, or people are going to think they're too big for their britches, or what will their kids think if they take more time doing something else. So there's really fear around somebody else is going to have a strong opinion about what I'm doing, and it's going to in some way cause pain, cause me pain, cause my family pain. There's going to be some sort of negative consequence based off somebody else thinking that this is the wrong path for me. So that's the big one that I see with women. And in general, what I do is I help them connect back into who they are, right? Because at the end of the day, it's your opinion that matters. You're the person that's gonna have to be alone, in the hospice bed by yourself in your own head at the end of the day, thinking about, like, these are the things that I did and these are the things that I didn't do. And so helping women be more courageous in the face of potential criticism is a huge part of my work.
I mean, really, when you think about it, well, going back right to the very first story that you were telling us about being called fat because you were trying to help out in a situation. It's not really surprising that us women kind of default to that fear of being judged. More of a general statement there than a question, but yeah, I mean, I can definitely link back my issues, my personal issues, to certain situations and things that have happened that that, but only when I've thought back to it. So I can certainly understand why women do struggle with these things.
And was this like a driving force? Because I know I want you to talk a little bit about the ladies who lunch. Was this like maybe a driving force about community connection? Like what explain to the audience what that is? Because it sounds like from one on with your clients, like you're building strategies, but you're also, I mean, you're coaching them in many ways, not just business, but you mentioned like one of the hiccups that women have. That feels like a very personal hiccup. Like, hey, I'm scared of what other people think about me. That's not necessarily a easy business box to check. You have to be like, okay, well, like fuck other people. Okay, well, like what does that look like? I care so much about what Susie Q's gonna say. So you're kind of doing a whole. You're wearing many different hats in your day to day. Ladies Who Lunch came from where?
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna answer that question after I talk a little bit to your preamble to the question. So most of what I do is on the kind of my husband calls it the psychobabble side of things, right? Much less the strategy side of things. You can go hire a business coach that can teach you how to do like clicks to cash, things like that. You can go hire a business coach to teach you how to build a funnel. You can hire a business coach to teach you how to structure an S corp. Like, I am not the person to come to teach you that. I am the person to come to when you are like, holy fucking balls, I was built to be so much bigger than I am, and I continue to shy away from my real purpose because I'm really, really scared of what might happen if I go all out for my dreams. Like, that's who I am. I'm that girl. And so when people work with me, it's generally I'm afraid that the thing that I'm about to do goes against how I was raised. Specifically, my parents thinking oftentimes with women, it's their mom. Oftentimes with men, it's their dad. The mean girl in your head. I've yet to meet a female who the mean, like critical voice in their head did not sound a whole lot like their mom. Like that is just kind of genetically how we roll. I'm convinced it's biological because I've now worked with enough women where I've heard them say, oh, God, it sounds like my mom's voice in my head, right? Where we have this very real drive to stay in alignment with what our core caregivers taught us was the right way to do things. And so if you want to scale a project, whether it's a nonprofit or an initiative at your kid's school or a company, if you want to scale a project and it's going to require you being someone different than who you were raised to be, you're going to have an existential crisis at some point. And I'm the person that you see to help you work through that. So Ladies Who Lunch is a women's networking group that I started here on Maryland's Eastern Shore where I live. And I really started because I wanted some more in-person friends that I had stuff in common with. I'm in recovery. I'm in a 12-step program and I have been for a very long time. And I had a relapse 5 years ago today. Today's the anniversary as we're
Wow.
today. So I had a relapse 5 years ago today. And I got treatment after that, and that was awful period of time in my life, just horrible and horrible for my son. But I came out of that and both of them I was very, very dedicated to making close friends in program. And my parents both saw it and they felt like I was being too insular. And they said to me, each of them separately said to me, like, you have to be bigger than your diagnosis. Like, you have to have friends beyond just the people in your recovery community. And now, like, I've been very serious and intentional about my where I fit in this community since that relapse. And now 5 years out, I see the wisdom of that advice that my parents have, not just for my own identity, but I've had a lot of people relapse and go out, and, like, that's been a heartbreaking experience to have, like, close friends that I rely on, one of whom I was, like, on her board as a nonprofit, board member, and she went out, and it was just heartbreaking and excruciating. So anyway, so my parents were both like, "You gotta make friends just beyond this, like, group of people here." And when I came to the Eastern Shore, I didn't know anybody, and I met some friends by creating a Facebook group for other single parents, and that's where I met my husband, and then moved out to the town that he's lived in his whole life, and I just wanted some more people. And so I put up something in all the community groups and Facebook community groups. And I said, I'm looking for other women who own businesses or are in leadership. And let's all go out to lunch on Friday at this restaurant. And 6 people showed up and it was great. And then the next time 15 people showed up. And then the next time 35 people showed up. And today will be the fifth or sixth one. And there's 23 people registered. So it should be a good time. But I really did for those of you who are in marketing or wanna market your company, creating Facebook groups are the way to go. I got my husband by creating a Facebook group and met him in there, so it's possible.
Yes. Your husband and your lunch dates with these ladies who lunch. Like you checked off a social and personal box all in one Facebook post.
Well, the different groups. I created it like, the real story, you want the salacious version of the story or the
Sure, why
okay.
not?
So the day before I moved out here to the area I live on, I was moving to an island, and I I got dumped by this nice guy that I was dating, but we'd been together for like 8 weeks, and it just wasn't going anywhere. It was one of those things where like both parties were like, "This isn't really going to take off into anything, is it?" And he pulled the plug, and I like getting all ready to move to my new house in my new town, and I'm like, "Damn it. I'm not gonna get laid. I don't know anybody." And so I was like, "Well, if I can create funnels for my company using Facebook groups, certainly I can do this for my personal life." And so I created this group called the name of the island, Kick-Ass Singles, And I just like started posting it in different places, and like 200 people jumped it in the first couple of days. And I was like, this is great. And so I was just like, we're going to have a social at this bar. We're going to go do this thing. And I put up something saying, I have my son this weekend. Does anyone want to go do something? And this cute boy responded, and he's like, hey, I'll go walk around airport day with you. And I was like, oh, another mom already said she'd go to the beach with us, but thanks. But then me and this cute boy continued to talk, and then we went out a month later, and now we've been married for almost a year.
I love the story. You used your expertise. Hey, I know how to create funnels and create, promote myself within, I don't know, this certain realm or industry. Why not do it for yourself? I love that story because so many times it's like it's hard to put on the social hat when it's like, well, just do the same fucking thing. You're used to, put, pop your chest out, say, hey, I'm new, I'm single, who wants to meet up? And that sweet boy is now your husband for how long? How long have you been married for?
We got married in December.
Fantastic. And you've been together for over how many years?
More than 4 years.
Fantastic. I love this story. You were brand new and you just reeled him in with a sweet Facebook post. Hey, let's hang out.
Yeah, well, he's a slut too, so that helped. But
hey, look, I'm hearing fearless here. Seriously, just
fearless.
There. I would have been hiding in a corner, going, "Oh no, don't look at me, no."
No, it like that group was so great because I met friends in it, and a true story. So that woman that went to the beach with me, she had gone on a couple of dates with my husband. Right, this is a small area, right? There's only like 50,000 people or so living within like wide span of areas. So she had gone on a couple of dates with my husband. And when he and I were like first starting to date, and I was like really falling for him, but he was already on board. And I was like, I don't know. I've like gone through a divorce. I was just like having a whole freak out about it. I texted her and I was like, were there any red flags? And she was like, nope, he's a great guy. It just didn't click for us. And like, I like went for it, and I'm so glad I did.
Bravo. Bravo. Like that's it sounds like up until this point, a lot of the experiences you've had, you've really taken the bull by the horns a lot of the, hey, this isn't working, I got to do this. Hey, this isn't working, I got to do this. And it sounds like you've kind of rode the wave. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't. And so at this part of the show, what we like to do, and it sounds like actually you're the perfect candidate for this.
Oh, it sounds like this question is completely irrelevant.
Yeah, totally. Right? 'Cause usually sometimes people
whole conversation has been this.
So Serena, take the lead. We like to ask a surprise question or a fun question from a previous guest, but Serena will take it feels like Liz is totally prepared for whatever the fuck we throw at her.
Now I'm like, okay, where is this going?
Okay.
Our last guest is Etiosa, and she left you a question at the end of her interview. And her question was, what have you learned from your greatest failure? I mean, you just literally bounced straight back in there. It's like nothing holds you back. It's like something's gone wrong. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to move on.
I'm trying to think what I would define as my greatest failure. I guess my greatest failure would be picking up drugs again. Oh, what have I learned? Don't do drugs. Don't do
Solid.
drugs. Yeah, so I have had periods of time where I've been I was addicted to Xanax, and I put that substance down in 2019. But then I was dating a boy, and that boy got diagnosed with cancer, and he was using medical marijuana to manage some of his symptoms, and I was listening to folks like him who really believed in medical marijuana's ability to do things like reduce anxiety. And I was living on a boat with my child, and I was the primary caregiver for a partner who had terminal cancer, and I was running a company, and I had a lot of anxiety. And so I like told my AA sponsor that I was going to use. I was like, this is medical marijuana and it's different, and like this is going to be a way to help manage my anxiety. And I was like FaceTiming with her outside of the dispensary where I was going to buy this product. And she said, like, I hope you don't do this, but if you do, like, there's always a seat here for you and like you're always welcome. Um, and I used and I had told the guy that I was with, I had said, I'm never gonna use this around my kids, and I'd put, like, a couple of disclaimers of, like, I will never do X and Y and Z. And that first night, I used it while I had my son. Like, my kid didn't see me use it, but, me and this boyfriend, that makes it sound like tawdry. He like, we lived together, like, he was very much, like, a committed partner. He wasn't just, like, some boyfriend hanging around the mall and, like, occasionally I'd pick him up for dinner or something. But I smoked while I had my kid, and, like, I had said, like, "I'm never gonna do this," and I did it the exact first night. And I think, like, the big lesson that I learned, God, there's a lot. Like, 1, like, surround yourself with people who have what you want. Like, I didn't wanna use drugs, but I was surrounding myself with people that were using drugs, and, like, for as much as they were, like, good drugs and, like, for the right reason, they're still drugs, and if you're a drug addict, you probably shouldn't use drugs. And then the other big lesson I learned was just, like, being willing to be humble. Like, the day after things, like, really, really fell apart, so 5 years ago today, August 1st, 2021, like, I called and I got on the phone, and I called, like, all these treatment centers, and I went to the hospital, and I got help, and it, like, was not fun in any way, shape, or form. It was, like, very, very humiliating, very humiliating. I had to take a leave of absence from my company. Like, it was miserable. So, like, the big thing, like, surround yourself with people who have lives that you want. Because I surrounded myself with people who were using, and as a result, I lost almost everything in my life. And I've gotten all of it back and then some, but it's not been a short road, and my kid will carry the scars of this for the rest of his life.
So I can honestly say your bravery, you're completely fearless, and the fact that you talk about these things so openly is just so refreshing.
I gotta say, like, God, I'm not like, when I think about how hurt my kid could have gotten, like, some of the times that we were on the boat and, like, some of the poor judgment calls I made when I was using medical marijuana, like, the other night, I was at my mom's house. We were spending the night because we were gonna go do, like, a fun summer activity the next day, and my son was sleeping in the guest bedroom with me, and apparently I pushed him out of the bed, which is something my husband has complained about, and now I have 2 users to explain to me that I am indeed the common problem. So I, like, wake up and my kid's not in the bed with me, and I, like, have that, like, moment panic, and I, like, look at the floor, and he's almost 13, he's as big as I am, he can pick me up, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my poor sweet baby is on the floor, like, what did I do to this little itty baby?" Right? And he's like this huge child, right? Wears my shoes all the time, it's crazy. And I just, like, look at him, and I have these moments of, like, fear, just like retroactive fear well up of, like, "Oh my god, X, Y, and Z could have happened to him because of my poor judgment," right? And, like, that is not a moment of fearless for me. That is just, like, profound, like, terror mixed with gratitude.
But owning it is fearless, and
Mm.
that's the difference. To actually
100%.
yeah.
Putting it out there and owning it. And what would you ask? Now, you don't know who our next guest is. That's kind of the thing. You don't know what industry they work in, no idea what their name is, their profile, nothing. What question would you ask them? And it can be relating to anything personal, professional. What's your preferred ice cream flavor? I mean, it doesn't have to be deep, but it can. You decide.
Oh, what haircut did you have along the path of life that you were the most embarrassed or disappointed in, and why?
Oh my god, I
Th-
love that.
That's great. Can I just tell you, Liz? We ask that question, of course, to every guest. And every guest naturally takes a second, maybe a minute or two to think about it. And we've been doing this now for what, almost 2 years. And I always say, hey, it doesn't have to be a deep question if you don't want it to be. It doesn't have to be about failure or how to be more efficient. And I have been waiting almost 2 years for someone to take the bait and just ask a fun goddamn question, that is like so no strings attached. And this finally 2 years in, I get the what haircut did you have that you're the most embarrassed? Thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you.
And to add to that, there's been no editing here. She went straight in with that question as though she's been sitting on it, and we didn't prep her.
Sitting on it, like
You know
waiting.
what? So I just had these stickers made, right? You both are marketers. I decided, in addition to business cards, I'm going to give out stickers. And they say messy hair, big dreams. They're so cute. And then they've got my little website on it. And some people have been like, well, are you a hairdresser? And I'm like, no, I just my hair doesn't even look like it's out. Like I
She's showing
have,
us her hair. She's showing us her lovely
I
bun
have,
taken down.
I mean, but this isn't even it. It's like I have spiral curly hair. And when it's not feeling well contained, it's just, it looks, do you guys remember Bozo the Clown? My hair looks like Bozo the Clown. It is like the most ridiculous, beautifully crazy hair in the entire world, and I love it. But yeah, growing up, my mom didn't know how to style our hair. My sister has similar hair. And so she would have it just cut really short. And if you have really curly hair, you know that the shorter it is, the less weight there is on it. And so it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I've had some interesting haircuts in my time.
And the fact that you have the sticker that says messy hair, big, there's so much. There's so many layers to you, which I love. And again, some of it is just conversational and light and funny.
Before we go further, Sarah, what was your worst hairstyle? Come on.
Oh, you already know. Bowl haircut, bangs. It was out of my control. Sit in the kitchen seat. Mom throws a towel around you. Let me tell you, Barb Ferrer did her best with those kitchen shears. But I look back at those first grade or kindergarten pictures. It's a bowl haircut. Me and my two brothers had the same exact haircut. You got the Barb special. Come to the kitchen, sit down, and let Mom chop, chop, chop. Next. So that would be it. What about you, Serena?
Well, you see, when I hit about 13, I thought a perm was the thing.
Yeah.
I did a perm.
Yeah, at home or in a salon? Because
In a
those
salon. It was in a salon. Hours of sitting there with these tiny little rollers in my hair. Because I wanted the curly hair. Okay, I wanted the curly hair.
yeah.
I love my curly hair, but it's a
Perm is
lot.
not the curly hair. It was scary. I spent the whole summer in hats.
That's so do you just put a lot of mousse in it and you're like, "Eh, the curl's gonna curl, right?"
What is that? What is that? Why? What? When you're that age and you get your perm, why is there crunchy hair? Why would
Crunchy hair, baby.
Crunchy hair.
Well, you have to get the mousse with the olive oil. If you are listening to this and you have incorrigible curly hair, you got to go to Walmart, the bottom level where they have the natural hair for women of color. You got to get that olive oil, get something with a name like Olive Oil Miracle or something. If it costs more than $6, you got the wrong one. You want the mousse. You get out of the shower with your hair soaking wet. You turn your hair over and you put on, got 2 baseball size amounts of mousse and you scrunch it and then you don't do anything else and it'll turn out perfect.
See, that whole curly girl hair is just, I love that. I mean, my daughter's got quite curly hair, so absolutely love it. But no, the perm was not that.
Serena, you know the assignment. You know the assignment from Liz. Walmart, bottom level.
Bottom level, olive oil goddess miracle of wonder or something.
I think I was pre the good stuff.
I love that. That is God, the twists and turns of this conversation. First of all, I have board straight hair. I kind of want to get a bad perm just so I can go and get the olive oil miracle product and spend $5.99 so that I'm following the rules of under 6, just to then FaceTime Liz and be like, did I do it right? There is something about, your journey and again, the ins and outs. And I think the realness to you, like Serena had said earlier, the realness, right? I'd call it flawless. Maybe at times you'd say, hey, I'm super flawed, but I am who I am. For anyone listening who is like, I dig this lady. I dig this lady. I want to know more about her. I want to visit her on her website, read about her profile, her bio. Where do people find you in this thing we call the World Wide Web?
It's just coachdrliz.com. So coach and then drliz.com. That's it.
And Instagram, Facebook, are you active on those?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. Instagram intimidates me. I'm not cool enough to be there. I'm still like a chubby girl at heart. So I there's you'll find an Instagram profile for me. I'm not super active. Facebook is where I'm the most active. You can find me on Facebook. It's just Biz Dr. Liz. And LinkedIn is the same. It's just Biz Dr. Liz. So facebook.com/Biz Dr. Liz, LinkedIn.com/Biz Dr. Liz.
And the Ladies Who Lunch, what area is that specifically in? What part of the country?
It's in Maryland. You're welcome to fly in for it if you want. The airport is 6 minutes away from the restaurant where we do it. So if you are in the Maryland area, we're at Tiger Lily the last Friday of every month at noon.
Fantastic. This has been such a treat. Like, we do this, we record these conversations. When I leave this call, and I'm sure Serena will be the same way, I don't know what to do with the rest of my day. There's so much to like. There's so much to be like, oh God, like the triumphs, the tribulations, the hair care. She knows everything. This has been really, yeah.
Call my family and say as much. She knows everything. They'll
Well, isn't it? Listen, I always say that those who are transparent and tell their stories usually, and I say this with love, if you were to say this to your mom or a sister, they go, "Who? You're talking about who?" I mean, that I think you don't have a family that like naturally, they support you, but they're also kind of sometimes shocked when they're like, "Oh, oh she's doing so well." Well, she was very lost last year. I think that there's an ebb and flow is what I'm trying to say. And when someone always says, "Hey, I'm great," and everyone thinks I'm great, usually it's quite the opposite. A little humbleness is always good to have. Yes, correct, correct. But this has been absolutely wonderful, Liz. Thank you for sharing your story, and we wish nothing but the best.
Thanks for having me.